Hello and welcome to Ep.3 of Street Smart, our podcast series. I'm Anu Chakravarty with the Global Center for Youth Futures. And our guest today is Evan Cauble Johnson. He's CEO of the Street Business School. That's a nonprofit that has worked with more than 80,000 people around the world, helping them set up their own micro businesses. The experiment has roots back in 2004 in a small organization in Uganda called Beads for Life. And the net profits from selling beads found its way back to the women participants, until the women expressed a desire to start their own businesses. And in 2013, a mobile program was developed to focus on entrepreneurial education on the street. And that was the start of the Street Business School. Evan, you have described the work of the Street Business School as a crash course MBA. If I understand it correctly, the Street Business School does not teach a specific trade. It is not a vocational training program. Can you tell us a bit more about the crash course MBA?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. And first, let me just say thanks, Anu, for having me on the podcast. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yes, likewise, yes.
So I like to describe Street Business School as a crash course MBA that is accomplished in a very short period of time. We usually work with the women entrepreneurs who start these micro businesses and are able to pull their families out of poverty in a period really of as quick as 4 months. You're taking somebody who may not have any income generating activity at all, is living in the direst forms of poverty. We specialize in working with individuals who are earning less than $1 a day. And in 4 months, we can teach them the skills that they need to become thriving entrepreneurs. We see women start really creative, business opportunity driven micro enterprises. We're serious about this. This is not, just a side hustle or something. This is
That's
really
right.
That they're starting. And within a 4-month period, they're able to leverage that and start to create an income stream that can support themselves and their families. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about what's included in the program.
Yes, let's talk about that. What is involved in the curriculum?
So the program is really comprised of, we describe it as 3 parts. And one of our founding team members, who was one of our early program directors, she used to say that confidence was the main dish, and the business skills were just a side dish or an appetizer. And so the 3 parts are really comprised of the curriculum, which I can talk more about, like what's specifically included in that. And that's the stuff that you'd recognize, that's business, right? Business is universal. The principles of how you run a successful business are really shared no matter where they're being operated around the globe. It's your bookkeeping, your marketing, your opportunity identification, your customer care programs, all those things that everyone's familiar with. The second part of the program is confidence building, especially because we focus on serving the needs of women coming from marginalized communities. We really understand that they face very special and significant barriers to becoming self-sufficient and especially to becoming seen as a breadwinner and to think of themselves as a breadwinner and somebody who's income to support their families. And so a lot of the program is focused on building women's confidence and giving them that mindset shift that they really can do this for themselves and for their families.
Right.
And the third part of the program is coaching, individualized one-on-one coaching that's delivered through licensed Street Business School trainers wherever it's offered in the world, who are taught a motivational interviewing technique and a way of helping women plan their business activities and get excited about the future and set goals for themselves and their families.
Right. If we may go into each one of these 3 components one by one, dig a little deeper. I'm curious, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of these women do not have a lot of literacy skills, or maybe they have not finished elementary school. And so how is this business training given to them? How do you teach young women or who have no financial literacy or basic numeracy skills?
That really comes out of where the program came from. So as you mentioned in your introduction, Street Business School was developed as a program of this fair trade jewelry business, Bead for Life, because the women artisans who were part of the bead making circle were asking for programming that could help them learn how to start their own businesses so they weren't relying on the export market. And we really quickly, as an organization, the founders of our program ran into the very problem that you bring up here. That their first inclination was, well, why reinvent the wheel? We'll go around and we'll find business training programs and we'll bring them in and we'll teach these women how to run a business. And immediately it was very clear that there were not really business training programs that were appropriate for the education level of that artisan group. That many of them had very limited, if any, literacy skills, very little math, some challenges with numeracy. And the materials that our founders were finding in the marketplace were very academic. There was a lot of filling out a spreadsheet and doing math and teaching these kind of abstract concepts. And we realized we needed something that was more practical and was down to earth. And so that's what we ended up building. And so Street Business School, I think one thing that makes us unique is that we were intentionally created for people with very limited educational attainment, very little background of formal education. And we've found very exciting, practical, fun. I think fun is one of the biggest operating words, fun ways to teach these business skills. So I'll just give you a really simple example that comes from one of our modules that's teaching people about the importance of and how to establish a bookkeeping practice.
Yeah.
So bookkeeping, classic business skill, everyone's familiar with keeping a general ledger. And the idea of that is usually, there are a lot of numbers involved. There's a lot of settling accounts and making sure that you're keeping track of what's coming in and out. If you're not somebody who knows how to write numbers or knows how to do the math, you still need to understand whether or not your business is generating enough revenue to cover your expenses. That's the only way you're going to know if you make a profit. A lot of the people that we work with, they might be doing some kind of income generating activity, but they're losing money on it because they don't understand their cash flow and what's actually profit, what's actually income for the business. And so one of the fun ways that we've come up with to work with folks who are in that camp who might have no math skills is we'll help them create aprons where they have multiple pockets on the apron with a picture of the different products they sell. So let's say that you're a woman going through our program and you decide to set up a street side stall and you sell different products. Maybe you have shoes or you have some food products, some matoke, or you're selling, any of the kinds of things that you see in a street side market. Well, in your pocket of your apron where you put the picture of your matoke, your Ugandan banana, you learn that if a customer buys that product, take the cash from that sale and put it in that pocket. When you then, after a week, or a couple of days, go back to the market to purchase your products wholesale that you're going to bring back to your street side stall and sell, only purchase your bananas out of that pocket. And you actually, what's powerful about that is it's so simple, right? Like if you can draw a picture of a banana and you can make an apron, you've got everything you need to run this bookkeeping method. And what's really exciting about it is you're really learning two things from this. So one, just at a very visceral level, even if you couldn't count the money, you can see how big the stack is right at the end of the week when you restock. So you know if you've made money on that product. But then almost more importantly, out of a range of, let's say you have 6 or even 7 or 8 pockets on your apron, you also then start to learn what's my leading product, which product actually gives me more cash, even if you can't count it. You can tell by bills are in there. And so it's those kind of small, very practical, very hands-on methods where we're taking these big business concepts and we're boiling them down to something somebody can put into practice right away, no matter where they are.
That's right. This really resonates because I was watching a module the other day on the topic was why rural farms fail in America. Intergenerational farms, so that somebody's grandparents they spend their entire life building up the farm and then only for it to fail after 20 years and millions of dollars down the drain. And according to the specialists, their number one reason for failing was the lack of financial management. Not understanding cash flow, not understanding which products or which channels of revenue are the one that's making money and the ones that are losing money. And to not have these underlying basics in place is one of the main reasons why these farms are failing after 2 generations of work in them. So
Yeah.
this makes a lot of sense, that at the end of the day, maybe, business training could be boiled down to these simple things or seemingly simple things.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, Anu, because I thought when I came here that it was gonna, street business school. I've been with street business school for about 3.5 years
Right.
now, and I thought coming into the program that, having worked for most of my career in different organizations that were providing basic human services and workforce development program, I thought there was going to be something different
Yeah.
about what we were teaching. And I have an MBA. I'm a proud DePaul University graduate. Go Chicago, go Demons. And I was really surprised at how similar the curriculum was to what I had gone through when I earned my MBA. Like how very similar the core concepts were, even though they're all delivered in this way that is like very tight and very applicable. And I honestly think like everybody should go through street business because in a lot of ways it was better than my MBA because it was so concentrated and it was so fast.
Right.
And we do spend a good amount of time thinking beyond the business in the program, that there are whole modules that are about your dreams for your future and your goals for your family and the kinds of things that you hear women talk about in rural Uganda are the exact same things that you hear people talk about in the United States or in Western Europe, that you're running a business because you want to invest in your family's future. You want to be able to pay for education. Well, in the United States, that might mean a college degree. In Uganda, that might mean being able to provide school fees for the private school near you because the public education system isn't serving the needs of your kids.
Right.
You might have a dream of owning a home, of purchasing livestock, of having a farm. Like the things that people want are so universal. And I think the thing that we recognize is the way that you get there is also universal. It's about understanding goal setting. It's about understanding how to manage your finances, how to set aside money for your savings goals, and be able to understand what your profit is from your business. We spent a lot of time on that. And I totally agree. I think if more people spent that time in Fortune 500 companies, we might not see so many disasters and things that you see in the financial markets on an annual basis.
That's right. When we think of micro businesses and the informal economy, and I know we talked about this before, we think of, 10 kiosks on the same street selling the same kinds of things. And, no one business is generating enough revenue to turn it into a viable income stream or to turn it into a sustainable livelihood because there's no differentiation. They're all on the same street selling pretty much the same things. What kind of opportunity identification are street entrepreneurs able to do, since they lack a lot of numeracy skills, lack a lot of literacy skills, but clearly they seem smart or capable enough to kind of find out where the opening is and to plan a business around it.
Right. Yeah, I think that I think you raised such a great point, and it's something that anyone who is involved in international development work has seen this kind of sad tale unwind time and time again, where there's a really creative idea for a vocational training program or an agribusiness program, and an NGO will come and it'll train 150 farmers how to grow the same crop, or 150 women how to sew the same textile good. And then, as you said, I mean, the problem is that if everyone is selling the same thing at the same time, I mean, it's basic economics, right? Like you've saturated the market, the supply is bigger than the demand, and your pricing crashes. And so I think that one of the things that we really believe in is that, our entrepreneurs, like they're the ones that are ultimately going to come up with their business. We really take the term entrepreneur seriously. This is not a vocational training program. This is teaching you how to create your own vision for the future. And just like an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, who's trying to figure out the niche and that they could do that nobody else is offering, it's those same methods that we look at. How can you solve a problem? How can you identify a gap? How can you see what somebody else is doing and maybe do it a little bit better? And in the course, we do things like separate the women. Usually women will go through the Street Business School program in a cohort. So something between 25 and 50 people at a time. through these modules in this classroom setting together. And in one of the modules, we'll pair women up as buddies and send them to the local market and say, go around, go spy, right? Like, go see what people are doing in the markets. Go see what they're selling. Go see if there are too many of one thing and not enough of another. Or, start to notice trends. Where are people getting their supplies from? Maybe you don't need to be the one with the stall. Maybe you could be the one selling the materials to the people who have the textile stall. Does everybody have chickens? Well, where are they getting their feed from? It's really starting to think about an economy and understanding the supply chains and the movement of goods and services and trying to find your niche in it based on interests, based on your experiences, based on, even if it seems like you have nothing, everybody does have something. They've got skills, they have experience, they might have some raw materials that they've never seen in the way that we teach them how to look at it. And so it's about developing that creativity and that entrepreneurship mindset of like trying to find that gap for yourself. A really great example of this was one of the stories that has stuck with me. We had a woman go through the program a couple of years ago now, and her name was Margaret. And Margaret was a widow who was a grandmother. She had 5 or 6 kids who were living in her house, who were a mix of her own grandchildren and then a couple of orphans that she had adopted. And she was, older and was somebody who, I think typical programs, you would think she would be relying on aid or something, right? That she opportunity for herself, and she was very, very impoverished, had very little available to her in terms of things that she could do to start up a business, but she was very creative. And so she started looking around at the community and thinking, well, what could I access? Like, what's out there that I could use to spin into a business? And she came up with the idea of leveraging termite mounds. If your listeners haven't been to East Africa, there are these 2-meter tall red dirt termite mounds, and they're a new, like, farmers hate them because they dig up their field. They don't really belong to anyone, except I guess to the termites. And so Margaret thought, well, what if I just go start tearing these things down? Nobody wants them anyway. Nobody's going to fight me for the materials, and I'll make bricks out of them. And so she started going around her community and ripping down these termite mounds. So she was almost providing like a public service. Maybe she should have just charged for that too. But then she set up this crazy brick making operation. I don't think we've checked in with her for about a year now, but the last time we talked to her, I mean, she was making hundreds of bricks a day, and was actually employing other locals to work with her on this. And she had like cornered the brick making market, but it was all termite mound based. And, nobody had thought of that before. Like, that's how you come up with an idea. That's how you start to create your own income stream. Right. Into a space where nobody else is.
Where do you think she got the technical know-how? Because it's one thing to kind of say, here's something I can do that nobody's doing. And then quite another thing to actually pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely.
The technical part of it.
And the other thing that's really interesting about what she did is brick making isn't typically seen as a woman's work, in the community that she was in. That was like a male activity. I don't know the specifics. I would guess she, went and talked to somebody else who was making bricks, or, saw somebody else doing it, or maybe she had a background where she did this at some point, but she just figured it out that, even though she didn't have, a lot of people get obsessed with this idea of capital. Like, I need money, I need a loan, I need microfinance to be able to do a business. And she just looked around and said, well, if I don't have any money, is there anything I can get? Is there anything that I can take? And the termite were the answer. But we see people do, all kinds of things like that. We'll see people start a business because they have one chicken and they start selling eggs and keeping one for their family to eat and then selling the other. After 6 months of doing that and building up some capital, they'll start the dressmaking business that they'd always wanted to do, but they had to save up for their sewing machine. And so people also learn this kind of deliberate approach to think about, sometimes a business might not be what you really want to do, but it could be a good starting point. And a lot of women that we train, years down the road will be operating 2, 3, 4 businesses. Some folks, that have graduated 5 years ago are like tycoons, and they've got rental properties, and they have delivery services, and they have 2 or 3 little kiosks where they're selling food. And it's just that kind of constant scanning of environment and trying to figure out where could you fit in, where could you unlock an additional income stream.
Right. No, the thing about the street business school that so captures my interest is how it builds on human resourcefulness.
Mm,
It doesn't count the human being out of the equation.
yeah.
Their basic instincts, their basic capabilities, their intelligence, and their local knowledge counts for so much. And it seems that SBS just builds around that, kind of
Yeah.
invests in that.
Yeah, and I think that that's very fundamental to the way that we're doing our work is like this idea that how are you ever going to, as an outsider of a community, and I don't just mean, I mean, obviously I live in the United States, a lot of our team's based in Uganda. Um, I can't helicopter into Kampala and tell somebody what they should be doing, but
Yeah.
even within the environment of Uganda, right? Like if you're in a densely urban environment and you're going to go out and try to coach somebody in a rural setting, do
Mm-hmm.
you really understand
Correct.
their struggles? And I think one of the potential challenges early on that we were looking at was, do you need to teach people a specific business? We had early experiments with same stuff that everyone looked at, textiles and shea butter and obviously our bead making. But I think one of the things that we realized early on was like the creativity is in the people,
Yeah.
and they know their environment, they know their locality, they know their economy better than you ever will, and they're always going to be in there, so they're going to constantly be scanning it. And
Right.
if you just give them the tools to start thinking a little bit differently about it and start to change their mindset of the way that they perceive opportunity, and
Mm-hmm.
then giving them those hard skills like the bookkeeping to make sure that they can actually capitalize on it, I think we were surprised, and are consistently like astounded by the creativity of the people that we work with, and so
Yeah.
excited that that's how it turned out, right? It turns out it really powerful to just sort of unlock people's creativity.
Absolutely. And I was also thinking that because SBS does not itself hand out microloans or
Right.
um, that you would be attracting to this curriculum only those who are the most motivated,
Yeah.
the people who are the most persistent, that
Yeah.
they're not put off by failing in their first one or two businesses and will keep trying to
I
use
think that.
tools that you're giving them.
Mhm, mhm. And the way that we do our mobilization, when we're working directly, and we can talk a little bit more about the
Mm-hmm.
structure where we work with partners, but we also teach this to the partners that we work with, is that the program starts with a community mobilization process where you go out and meet the local leaders and advertise what you're doing, and you hold an orientation session, which usually attracts about twice as many people as end up enrolling in the program, because one of the
Yeah.
first that we say is there are no loans, there are no giveaways, there are no handouts. All it is education, and you're going to put in the hard work. It's only going to work because of you.
That's
And you see, about half the people will walk out of the room at that point. But I think the ones that stick it out, they get it, and they really believe in this idea of sort of changing the paradigm of thinking about resources,
yeah.
and the idea that you always need something that you don't have to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there are cases of extreme privation, right, where people need food and they need water and everyone needs medical care. Like, big believer in human rights and basic decency. We should provide that to everyone on the planet. But
Yeah.
the sad reality is we don't. And sometimes in the poorest places on earth, people are just as creative and just as brilliant and just as dogged and determined as people anywhere else in the world. And if you can help them start to think about what is
That's
available to them, they can find those opportunities in themselves and they can push. And I think we've seen how that bears out over time. So to your comment about, people not giving up when their business has failed, one really interesting thing that we witnessed during the COVID pandemic was that we were actually in the middle of an independent research study on our program when the lockdown started in 2020. And a really interesting finding is that the group that had received street business school training in our study saw almost no change to their income when the lockdown started,
okay.
because they just immediately pivoted. People shut down their kiosks and started delivering door to door. People
Uh,
changed their products to something that people needed in lockdown, they managed to just keep the money coming in. Whereas what we saw in the control group that was part of the study that hadn't received the street business school training is their income just disappeared overnight because they couldn't do whatever they had been doing before, and it just cratered. And I think it's that mindset shift, right? Like it's only going to be coming from me. I have to figure out tonight what I'm going to do tomorrow. I have the tools to kind of scope that out and figure out what that might be.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to your points about mindset and entrepreneurial mindset, that you're agile, that you're not, I mean, just because times are bad and you shut your business down doesn't mean you can't think of an alternative.
Right.
Go for it. I recall when we spoke last, you said that the basic philosophy was a try fast, fail fast model. What's that all about? How does that work?
I think, yeah, it's a great question, Anu. I mean, I think when you consider the lives of the people who are enrolling in our program, they're at the extreme low end of the socioeconomic ladder globally, and they are extraordinarily vulnerable in terms of how fragile their lifestyle is, because every day they're trying to secure the money to pay for food tomorrow. Like we talk about paycheck to paycheck in the United States, but this is hour to hour, right? Like, are you going to have enough to eat tomorrow? Are you going to be able to send your kids to school the next week? And so one of the things that, is really core to our program is that we understand that, and we have no expectation that you could deliver a program that's, hey, come learn about business for us for 3 months, and then after you graduate, we'll help you start one. The idea is really to just get started right away. And so after the second or the third out of our 8 modules, we really expect people to get their businesses up and running, and that's within the first month of the program. And so they'll, in the classroom setting, everyone will, they have like a call and response thing where everyone goes, when are you going to start your business? And everyone yells, today, because the idea is you want to get them rolling. And I think to your point about fail fast, it's like, try something, see if it's working. If you can't figure out the cash flow, do something else. Like these are micro businesses, and one of the business benefits of micro business is you can start up and you can shut down really, really quickly, and you can integrate something new into what you're doing, and you can just keep kind of iterating on it and experimenting until you find that thing that's going to be a more stable income stream for you, and then you can onto that. But I think it's very common for people to have 2 or 3 businesses as they get up and running. Even if they don't fail, that are, like I was saying earlier, just those like stepping stone businesses. I know I need $50 so I can buy a sewing machine. So I'm going to do whatever it takes for the first 3 weeks, selling old dresses, selling old shoes, going around and doing errands for people, like whatever that is, that gig economy mindset kind of thing, until I can get my $50, and then I'm going to buy my sewing machine. And then I have this, bigger business plan that I've been working on with my coach, all these things in between. And then even after I start sewing, I might keep doing, 2 or 3 other activities until I'm able to really professionalize them.
Right. It's, I can see the part that planning goes into this. I mean, there's that this little thing that I'm doing now is only a stepping stone for me to do the other thing that I'm really interested in.
Yeah. And that goes on forever. I mean, last time I was in Uganda last fall, we were talking to one of our graduates who, I think she graduated, I think now it would be over 6 years ago, Susan, and she's like a tycoon now in her area. So she started off with chicken rearing, and now she has this massive like building where she's rearing, dozens and dozens of chickens. She also realized all the other people in her community who were doing chicken rearing were all buying feed from the same person who was way outside their community. So then she cornered the chicken feed market, and she started offering chicken feed as well. So she was, getting it cheaper wholesale for her own chickens, and then selling it to all of her, neighbors who also had chickens for their personal use or for business. She got ambitious, and when I was there, she was all excited because she had bought a truck. So she bought a pickup truck and is now like driving chicken feed all across, outside of her village, and found that more and more people need this chicken feed. So she like took over a market because she realized the distance between the other provider of chicken feed from where was just like far enough that she could step into that gap. And She's doing all kinds of other stuff. She's built some houses that she's renting out. And I mean, you really, in these informal settings, I think one of the things that's interesting about Street Business School is in these informal economic settings, you also can try things faster, right? Because the regulation, if it exists at all, is so small. You know, it's a tax collector who walks through once a day, up some fees. It's not getting a business license and going through all the things you would have to do in a more developed market. And so that itself to this kind of street business school mentality of like, get out there and try some things.
Right. And the idea that, you know, it's the mindset is so important, because even at $1 capitalization, you can start your own business. Like the example you gave of the lady who started building bricks out of termite hills. I mean, that's practically costless to start. And, you know, even if she didn't turn it into you know, she didn't become a tycoon, I can see that she could have, you know, made a sustainable livelihood out of it. So it's really, this thing is so important. This point, I think, is very important about building this mindset and helping them think through things. Evan, I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the coaches, because it seems that they are the ones on the ground doing that work with them. So what does that look like? What does that entail? How long does that take?
Sure. So this is one of the things that's really exciting about Street Business School. So I always say that there are two things we do really well. So we have this business training program that can teach anybody in the world to be an entrepreneur and to develop, you know, the income streams that they need to support themselves, to support their family. So that's what we've been talking about. The second thing that we can do really well that I think is also something that's unique to us and is really exciting in terms of what it might mean for the future in our goal to get to as many people as possible, is we're also really, really good at teaching other people how to run that program. So we have our own coaches in Kampala, Uganda. We have a small office in Kampala where we run training programs for a few hundred people a year. We're growing that over time. This year we'll be around 1,200 total people, and you know, continue growing that and working over time. But where we really are seeing growth in terms of our ability to reach more people is that we've developed a training program for other NGOs where we can teach their team members to be Street Business School coaches. We have a certification program, and we've worked with hundreds of other organizations now. I think we've trained 300 organizations in 37 countries on how to do Street Business School in their communities. These are very local grassroots outfits. A lot of them are doing other work. It might be a health center or a school, or a program for rural farmers that are smallholders, and they're looking for that extra element that's going to help boost the income of the people that they serve to, you know, ameliorate the problems of poverty and these other problems that they're dealing with. And we can teach them how to do it. So the way that it works is we have a week-long training program. It can either be a week through an in-person residential experience, or it can be spread over 6 weeks and done virtually for our partners. And we teach them the ins and outs, everything from how you mobilize a community and build up interest, all the way through how you run the training modules, how you do the one-on-one coaching, how you build confidence, even how we run our graduation celebration and ceremony. Everything in very great detail. It's like an off-the-shelf solution if somebody's interested in this kind of work. And then come out of that training workshop fully equipped to go do what we do in Kampala and deliver it in their communities. Our partners have seen really tremendous results. We've found that on average, we can about double people's income within that 6 months of them running through the program. So that takes them from a little less than $1 a day to over $2 a day, getting them above that extreme poverty line. Our partners do just as well. And they submit data back to us. We have a really cool CRM system that's pulling in data from all over the world. And found that they can maintain the same kind of impact that we do. And the coaches are fantastic. Like, they really have this whole package of different interventions that stretch through how you run these modules, all the way to how you work with each individual and do this kind of planning and coaching with. And everything is centered around this idea of like really believing in the people you serve, of lifting them up, of believing, as you just said, that they're the ones who are the creative change agents. Your job is to support them as they move to flourish.
Right. Once a student graduates, are they able to come back and access the coaching that's available, or they are able to come
Yeah.
back with the coach and say, hey, I'm having this problem, 6 months down the road, I graduated from the program. Can you help?
Yeah, what we found is that that tends to happen informally. So we describe ourselves as a graduation style program. So the
Right.
idea is to, across everything we do, both for when we train our partners on how to be coaches themselves, and then when those coaches or we ourselves go work with the entrepreneurs in the community, we're big believers in the idea that like once somebody's gone through this, once they've received the education, they've got it. They're going to be the ones that run with it. Like they don't need us anymore. So there's no specific alumni programming because we really don't want people to be dependent on us. Now, that
Right.
being, when you're a coach, like when you go through that experience with somebody, that's a powerful personal bond. When the cohort go through the program together, 30 women who all start businesses at the same time, that's a powerful personal bond. And so we tend to see that kind of informal relationship continue for a really long time. But we actually just did a small project where we reached out in the fall to everyone who had graduated from our program in Kampala, or between like 3 and 5 years ago. So folks who graduated like 2018 through 2021.
Right.
And just checked back in with them. And a lot of these were folks we hadn't talked to since they graduated, in 2018, 2019. And we found that they had continued, not only did they maintain their income gains, but they had actually continued to increase their income. And on average, when they graduated the program way back in 2020, 2018, they had doubled their income. And then when we followed back up with them, some of them had quadrupled it. Almost everyone had tripled. So the average was more than tripled income.
Right.
So over that time period, even without us talking to them, even without ongoing, even with additional support, they just kept growing their income, kept experimenting with their businesses. And I think that's really, to me, that's the dream, right? It's like you come in, you unlock this potential in people that they didn't even know they had, and then they don't need you anymore. They come back to tell great they're doing, right? Not that they necessarily need additional help.
Right. And I think these positive externalities, the cohorts that are created and the informal networks that they're able to sustain over time outside of the program, I think those are really useful assets that you create. In terms of raw numbers, Evan, it may not seem much that $1 turns into $2. But I think that's a real meaningful changes in their lives on the ground. It may be something hard for most of us to grasp. $1 turning into $3 a day can add a lot of options to their lives.
It absolutely can. I mean, that's a tremendous shift for people who are living on the margins. That can be the difference between being able to feed your family consistently. I would say the most common personal goal for a woman who goes through our program is that they want to be able to provide for school fees.
Right.
And that can mean school fees, right? Like if you kind of back out the time scale and think of what it means, right? If you've been earning $1 a day and you increase it by $1, that's $365 new dollars within a family living at the absolute margins over that next year. And importantly, it persists. So you're talking about, orders of magnitude, right? Everyone throws around like social return on investment.
Right.
It takes us right now, we're estimating about $300 to train somebody in street business school. So you're paying back that investment in a year.
Yeah.
5 years, you're 5-timesing it. Like it really, because it doesn't require that ongoing support, because it is a very time limited, one-time intervention that give people that foothold, it really pays for itself for folks who go through it very quickly, and then it just keeps going year after year. And for folks who are then tripling, like an extra $2 a day, I mean, imagine how good would you feel if somebody boosted your income by 100%?
That's right. It is 100% increase. So it is very meaningful. And though in terms of just raw numbers, they're still poor, but it makes a significant difference to their quality of life and the dignity they're able to live with.
And I think especially now, Anu, right, like as we're looking around the world and seeing the United States pull back from its commitments to supporting, people in the direst conditions, like people are going to need more ways to answer their own problems because we're pulling back from that, commitment to provide the relief and the aid. And without drifting into politics and value judgment and everything, I think giving people the ability to not rely on external source is a powerful tool for them that makes them
Yeah.
less vulnerable to whatever is going to happen in the future, whether it's, continued political challenges, whether it's climate change. One of the population groups that we've seen some of the most promising returns in terms of their ability to really dramatically increase their income is that some of our partners focus on refugee populations, even within camp settings. And what they found is that the agility, that we were talking about, the ability to start right away and be okay with it evaporating in 6 months.
Yeah.
Because you know how to do it again later.
Yeah.
People living in these camps have been able to stabilize their finances within the refugee camp, right? And think about what that has to mean for a family that's been in this kind of tumultuous transitional point. They suddenly can rely at least on some income coming in.
That's right. And the wonderful part about these partnerships with organizations that are focused on these other sets of issues is the multiplier effect. I mean, you are a livelihood generating an organization focused on helping people with their livelihoods, and yet these partnerships help to advance, dozens of other important issues around the world, and gender equity and health and climate change and whatnot.
Yeah. Sometimes people will ask me, when we're sharing data, sometimes people will see on any given year, sometimes our partners beat us, in terms of total income gain. You'll see the every year there are a few hundred people that we're training directly in Uganda, and we're getting, a couple thousand data points that are coming in from the partnership network. And sometimes gains are better than ours. And people will ask, well, that seems crazy. You guys are the expert. These people just went long training. And I remind exactly what you said. I say, oh yeah, but our partners are also giving them something else.
That's right.
If it's surrounding a health clinic, now these people are getting street business school training, but they're also having their basic healthcare needs met. If it's a school, it's very common now for schools to provide street business school to the parents because it firms up their ability for that community to pay the school fees, which makes the school more sustainable, which makes the kids' outcomes better because they stay in school longer, which must relieve stress on the parents. So it really is. We're just one small piece in this giant puzzle of how you really start to improve communities around the world. And I think we're so eager to find, like-minded partners and organizations that have figured out their own really exciting interventions and find ways to blend these two things together.
Right. You were talking about moving from this kind of model where you build partnerships with local organizations to a social franchise model where you build partnerships with organizations that have a larger footprint. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what is the promise of moving to this other model?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really about scale, right? We believe really strongly that we've come up with something that is doing what is very, very challenging and very difficult to do, which is to move people out of extreme poverty. I mean, we're seeing it anecdotally. I see it every time our trainers are out in the field. From the data, we're seeing it within the data we're collecting. People really are exiting extreme poverty by starting these micro enterprises. And so, my belief when you're fortunate enough to be sitting in a place where you're seeing an effective tool like that, our main now is, okay, well, let's get this in the hands of everyone who needs it. And I mean, there are billions of people that need this right now. And so what we're experimenting with are different ways to reach that scale right now. This is part of the plan that we're working on. We want to thousands of people's lives, but we'd love to change millions. And I think one of the ways that we've realized we might be able to achieve that is by working with some of these other tremendous organizations who have figured out that scale piece and are really the experts of bringing programming to large populations across an entire country or a region. And so we're always looking for and interested in talking to large international NGOs who see how integrating street business school into what they do might be able to help strengthen or kind of capitalize on the amazing programming that they already offer. We have one partnership that we established with BRAC, the incredible Bangladesh-based INGO that is a global force and reaches hundreds of people. We did for them a small scale program for them in sub-Saharan Africa, where we had street business school embedded in some work that they were doing with youth mentoring in 5 countries. That was really just a truly fantastic way to spread this program across thousands, and we're hungry for more. We'd love to look at working with governments, with INGOs, with anyone who really can see the promise of absorbing this curriculum. And I think one of the things that's so exciting about being where I am and sitting at Street Business School is we have the methodology to give other people this curriculum, and we know it works. Teach them how to do it, and so we don't have to triple in size. We don't have to become a gigantic INGO.
Yes.
We generously share what we've learned with everybody else, and I think by doing that we can find a more expedient way to reach people all over the planet. And importantly, that plays on the same observation that we've made for years about the entrepreneurs themselves, that who's going to know how to deliver this in Honduras? Amazing grassroots leaders in Honduras, right, who have been doing it for years, who know that community. Who's going to deliver it in India or in Southeast Asia? Not us. We're not going to fly our Ugandan team around the globe. If you're an expert in community development in your area and you're interested in this, we can teach you how to do it, and then you can customize it for your community and make sure that it really takes hold in a way that's sustainable.
That's right. Evan, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's wonderful that this actually works. It's so impactful, and all of this huge work is being done without fanfare. I want to stand on a rooftop and shout out. Have you heard about the Street Business School, folks? You need to know about SBS.
Thank you for lending us the rooftop of your podcast to be able to shout from. And it was truly a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And we really appreciate the interest in our program and what we're doing. Thanks for shining a light on it, and for the other amazing work that you do helping to bring attention to the sector.
Thanks, Evan. Congratulations on all your work, and our best wishes on the journey forward. That's all we have time for today. Until episode 4, take care. Bye-bye.